All right, so get ready, because today we're diving deep into the world of coffee.
Sounds delicious.
You sent us this interview with James Hoffman.
The world barista champion.
Yeah, from the Diary of a CEO YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one.
It was so interesting, so I thought we could unpack it together
Yeah, let's do it.
and, learn a little bit more about coffee.
It's funny how we drink coffee almost every day,
Yeah,
but there's still so much we don't know about it.
I know. And James really challenges some of our basic assumptions
Oh, really? Like what?
about coffee, starting with caffeine itself.
Okay.
We always think of coffee as like an energy booster.
Yeah, that morning, pick me up
Exactly.
and gets you going.
But he explains that caffeine doesn't actually give us energy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it actually blocks a compound in our brain called adenosine.
Adenosine.
Yeah, have you heard of that?
I haven't, but what does that do?
So adenosine is what makes us feel tired.
Okay.
And so when it's blocked by the caffeine,
Uh-huh.
we feel more alert.
Ugh.
But it's not real energy. It's just masking our tiredness.
Oh, so it's kind of like tricking our brain into thinking we're not tired.
Exactly. So that first cup in the morning
Yeah.
might not be boosting you. It might just be bringing you back to your baseline.
Oh, wow. That makes a lot of sense.
I know. So it explains why we feel that afternoon slump
Oh, yeah.
and we want more coffee.
Yeah, like you get that crash and you need another cup.
Exactly. We're not getting more energy. We're just masking the tiredness that's already there.
So we're basically borrowing energy from later in the day?
Exactly. And eventually we have to pay it back.
Wow, that's kind of a game changer.
I know, right?
Mhm.
So that feeling of needing coffee to function,
Yeah,
it's real, but not in the way I thought.
totally. It's like a whole new perspective on coffee.
I know. So caffeine is more complex than we realize.
For sure.
But what about all the negative stereotypes about coffee?
Ooh, yeah, I mean, I've heard so many of those.
Me too.
That's bad for you and dehydrating,
Yeah.
all that stuff.
But James kind of debunks all that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he points to a ton of research
Okay.
that suggests that coffee might actually have some benefits for our health.
What? Really?
Yeah, like pretty amazing benefits.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Fill me in.
So for starters, studies show that coffee drinkers might live longer.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I would not have guessed that.
Me neither. And there's evidence that it reduces the risk of cognitive decline
Okay.
and even Alzheimer's.
So coffee is good for our brains.
It seems that way.
Wow.
Yeah. So that stereotype of coffee being bad for us is totally wrong.
I guess it's amazing how much research is out there
I know, right?
that we just don't hear about.
Totally.
So what other benefits did he talk about?
Well, he even talked about coffee potentially benefiting our mental health.
Interesting.
Yeah, he suggests experimenting with caffeine intake if you struggle with anxiety or depression.
Okay.
Though he's careful to say it's not a cure-all.
Right. It's not a magic bullet.
No,
Yeah,
it's still,
It's interesting.
yeah, it really makes you rethink your relationship with coffee. And the benefits don't stop there.
Oh, there's more.
Yeah. Did you know that coffee can be a surprisingly good source of fiber?
Wait, really? Fiber in coffee?
I know, I was surprised too.
I had no idea.
And in fact, Tim Spector, the gut health guru,
Yeah.
considers a cup of coffee as one of his 30 weekly servings of fruits and vegetables.
Hold on. Coffee counts as a fruit or a veggie.
I know, isn't that wild?
That's amazing.
It highlights another potential benefit of coffee supporting a healthy gut microbiome.
Wow. So coffee is good for our brains, our longevity, and our gut.
It seems so.
That's incredible.
I know, right? It's like the ultimate health drink.
Almost.
Yeah.
But what about the amount of coffee we drink?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point because James actually mentioned that a lot of the research
Yeah.
uses surprisingly small amounts of coffee.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like the equivalent of 1 or 2 cups a day,
That's not a lot.
which is far less than a lot of people drink.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who have way more than that.
Yeah, me too. It's a good reminder that moderation is key.
Yeah, even with something as beneficial as coffee.
Exactly.
So those recommendations we hear about, like 3 cups a day,
Yeah.
maybe not the best idea.
It's worth being mindful of our intake,
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay, so we need to pay attention to how much coffee we're actually drinking.
Exactly.
Got it.
And, if caffeine is a concern,
Yeah.
James has a surprising suggestion.
What's that?
Don't write off decaf.
Decaf. Really?
I know. I always thought it was just like sad coffee.
Yeah, me too. I always thought it was like the boring alternative.
Yeah, exactly.
So why does he recommend it?
Well, he makes this really compelling case for it.
Okay.
He points out that decaf drinkers are actually the purest coffee lovers
Oh, how so?
because they're focused on the flavor alone, not the caffeine kick.
That's interesting.
Right.
Yeah, it kind of reframes the whole idea of decaf.
I know. It makes you think about, is our love of coffee truly about the taste?
Yeah.
Or is it just the caffeine we're after?
That's a good question.
And with the quality of decaf improving all the time.
Uh-huh.
There's no reason why we can't enjoy the richness and the complexity of coffee
Yeah.
without those potential downsides of caffeine.
So we can still have our cake and eat it, too.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued by decaf now.
Me too. I'm going to have to try some.
But let's get back to the flavor for a second.
Okay.
I mean, who better to guide us than a former world barista champion?
Exactly. What does James say about brewing the perfect cup?
Well, he emphasizes that freshness is key.
Okay.
Ground coffee deteriorates really quickly.
Yeah.
So grinding your beans right before brewing is super important.
Makes sense to unlock the best flavor?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I've heard him talk about the importance of a good grinder before.
Yeah. Yes, he is so passionate about grinders.
I know.
He says that a good grinder is actually more important than a fancy espresso machine.
More important than the machine.
I know it sounds crazy.
All right, I would have thought the
But he
opposite.
says especially for home brewing.
Okay.
That's the key.
Yeah.
It's all about the consistent grind size. Okay.
Which impacts how evenly the coffee extracts.
Interesting.
And he even did this blind taste test with different coffee brands.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
From McDonald's to an independent shop.
Yes. Okay, so which one won? I'm dying to know.
Well, the independent shop's coffee stood out for its unique flavor and character.
Okay.
But what's interesting is that the price difference between the chains and the independent shop wasn't huge.
So you're saying you don't necessarily have to break the bank to get a better cup of coffee?
Exactly. It's about knowing what to look for,
Okay.
investing in the right equipment, and paying attention to those little details that make a difference.
Okay, I'm totally on board with that.
Me too. But before we get too carried away with all this delicious coffee talk,
Yeah.
there's a bit of a dark cloud hanging over the future of coffee.
You're talking about climate change, right?
Yeah.
Because James paints a pretty stark picture of what could happen to our beloved coffee.
What does he say?
Well, he warns that we might see less high-quality coffee in the future. Oh, no.
And that the price of what's left will likely skyrocket.
That's a scary thought, especially considering how much we rely on that daily cup.
I know. And he explained that coffee needs cooler temperatures to thrive.
Okay.
And as the planet warms up,
Yeah,
those ideal growing regions are shrinking.
that makes sense.
And the only way to find cooler temperatures in a warming world is to go higher up the mountain.
Uh-huh.
But there's less and less land available the higher you go.
Right.
So it's like a double whammy.
Definitely a tough situation.
Yeah, it raises a tough question for all of us coffee lovers.
What's that?
Should we be prepared to pay more for our coffee?
It's a question of ethics and sustainability, for sure.
Absolutely.
Are we willing to invest in a higher price to support ethical and sustainable coffee production?
Exactly. That's what we have to ask ourselves.
Is a tough one.
It is, and it leads us perfectly into the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, let's get brewing. You know, it's fascinating how climate change is forcing us to rethink
I know.
our relationship with so many things. Yeah.
Even coffee.
Even coffee. And I think it's pushing us to be more conscious consumers.
Yeah.
Not just with coffee, but with everything we buy and
Yeah.
consume.
Absolutely. We're starting to understand that our choices
Yeah.
have a real impact.
Yeah.
And we have the power to make a difference through those choices.
Like choosing to support
Exactly.
sustainable coffee farms
Yes.
that are trying to adapt to these changing conditions.
Exactly. And those farms often produce some of the most incredible coffee in the world
Really?
because they're so focused on quality
Okay.
and preserving those delicate flavor profiles.
It's like that saying, necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
Maybe these challenges will lead to even more innovation
Totally.
and creativity in the coffee world.
I think so too.
Yeah.
We've already seen so much innovation in recent years
Yeah.
with brewing methods and coffee varieties.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's even more to come.
Speaking of innovation.
James talked about the importance of using the right equipment,
Oh, yeah.
especially at home.
Yeah.
Remember that blind taste test
Oh, yes. The McDonald's one?
with McDonald's coffee
Uh-huh.
and the independent coffee shop?
It was so eye-opening.
I know, who would have thought that McDonald's coffee would score so low?
I know, right? But to be fair, it wasn't terrible.
No, it wasn't terrible.
But it definitely paled in comparison to the independent shop's coffee.
Yes, and the price difference wasn't even that much.
Exactly. It shows that you don't have to spend a fortune
Yeah,
to get a good cup of coffee, but you do need to invest in a few key things.
like that good grinder he keeps raving about.
Oh my gosh, yes, the grinder.
It's funny how he's more passionate about the grinder
I
than
know.
the actual coffee machine.
He's like, forget the fancy espresso machine. Just get yourself a decent grinder.
I know, and he makes a good point.
Yeah.
A good grinder will ensure that your coffee beans are ground consistently.
Yes.
Which is essential for extracting all those amazing flavors.
He even compared ground coffee to fresh food.
Oh, really?
Saying that it starts to lose its flavor and aroma quickly once it's been exposed to air.
So pre-ground coffee is basically like stale bread.
Pretty much, if you want the freshest, most flavorful coffee,
Okay.
grind your beans right before brewing.
Okay.
That's one of the biggest things you can do to improve your home coffee experience.
Okay. I'm getting a grinder.
Do it.
What about brewing methods?
Oh, yeah.
Because James mentioned pour-over as like a simple and elegant way to make coffee.
He's a big fan of pour-over because it allows you to control the brewing process and to really highlight the nuances of the beans.
And it's not just pour-over. There's French press.
Oh, yeah.
AeroPress mocha pot.
It's overwhelming.
It's kind of overwhelming.
But it's also fun to experiment.
Yeah.
And see what you like best.
Yeah.
Each brewing method brings out different flavors and aromas in the coffee.
So it's like having a whole toolkit to play with.
Exactly.
Depending on your mood and the type of coffee you're using.
Exactly. And that leads us to another exciting aspect of coffee.
Okay.
The different types of beans and roasts.
Oh, yes. There's so much variety out there.
I know.
Light roasts, dark roasts.
Single origin blends.
It's like a whole other language.
It is. And just like wine, different regions and growing conditions.
Yeah.
Produce coffee beans with unique flavor profiles.
I remember James saying that he loves coffees from Colombia.
Oh, yeah.
Because they offer such a wide range of flavors.
Right. Colombian coffees are incredibly diverse. You can find everything from bright, fruity notes
Great.
to rich, chocolatey flavors.
And he encourages people to try coffees from different regions of the world.
Yes.
To experience those unique characteristics of each origin.
It's a journey of exploration.
It really is.
And with so many incredible coffees out there, there's always something new to discover and savor.
It's amazing to think that something as small as a coffee bean
I know, right?
can hold such a diversity of flavors.
It's a complex and fascinating world.
It really is. And it's that complexity and diversity that makes coffee so endlessly captivating.
It's more than just a drink. It's a whole sensory experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And whether you're a casual coffee drinker or a seasoned connoisseur, there's always something new to learn and appreciate about coffee.
So for our listeners who are feeling inspired to dive deeper into the world of coffee, where should they start?
Well, I definitely recommend checking out James Hoffman's YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah. He's got great videos.
He has a wealth of information on everything from brewing techniques to coffee history to equipment reviews.
And don't forget his books.
Oh, yes, his books.
The World Atlas of Coffee.
Yes.
And How to Make the Best Coffee at Home.
Are both excellent resources.
Absolutely. And if you're ready to upgrade your home coffee setup, remember James's #1 piece of advice.
Get a good grinder.
Invest in a good quality grinder.
He recommends spending at least 150 pounds for a grinder that will last you a lifetime.
It's true.
And produce consistently ground coffee.
Yep.
That's a small price to pay.
It is.
For years of delicious coffee.
It's an investment in your coffee happiness.
And once you have that good grinder, you can experiment with different brewing methods and beans to find your perfect cup.
And don't be afraid to ask questions.
Oh, yeah.
At your local coffee shop or roastery.
Yeah, because most coffee professionals are so passionate about their craft.
They are, and they're happy to share their knowledge.
Yeah. They can help you discover new coffees, brewing methods, and even offer tips for making better coffee at home.
That's a great point. And remember, there's no right or wrong way to enjoy coffee.
That's true.
Whether you prefer it black with milk and sugar or even decaf.
Yeah.
The most important thing is that you savor the experience and find what brings you joy.
And that you're mindful of your caffeine intake.
Yes.
And how it affects you.
Very important.
Jade made a really interesting point about how our relationship with caffeine might change in the future.
What did he say?
He believes that we'll become more aware of its effects and potentially reduce our consumption.
That makes sense.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No, not at all.
It might mean that we appreciate those caffeine moments even more.
Yeah.
And focus on quality over quantity.
I love that idea.
Me too. It's about being more intentional
with
our coffee consumption. and savoring those special moments.
And who knows, maybe we'll see a decaf revolution in the future,
Ooh, a decaf revolution.
where people are just as excited about a delicious cup of decaf
Yeah.
as they are about a high-octane espresso.
I'm all for that, especially if we continue to raise the bar for decaf quality
Yes.
and challenge that perception that it's a flavorless alternative.
Totally. James would definitely agree with you there.
Oh, yeah.
He's a true advocate for decaf.
Yeah.
And believes it can be just as delicious and satisfying as regular coffee.
He even said that decaf drinkers are the purest coffee lovers
I know.
because they're focused on the flavor alone, not the caffeine kick.
It's a fascinating perspective.
It is. It makes you wonder if our obsession with caffeine has sometimes overshadowed our appreciation
Yeah.
for the inherent flavors of coffee.
It's definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
Maybe as we become more mindful of our caffeine intake,
Yeah.
we'll also become more attuned to those subtle nuances of flavor and appreciate the complexity of coffee even more.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it.
Oh, thank you.
It's about rediscovering the essence of coffee
Yeah.
and enjoying it for what it truly is,
Uh-huh.
a complex and delicious beverage that can bring us joy, connection,
Yeah.
and moments of quiet contemplation.
And one that has the potential to connect us to cultures,
Yes,
communities, and the environment.
absolutely. We've covered so much ground today.
We have.
From the science of caffeine
To the history of coffee houses.
to tips for brewing a perfect cup at home.
It's been an incredible deep dive into the world of coffee,
It really has.
guided by the wisdom and expertise of James Hoffman.
Yes, I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Me too. It feels like I've learned so much.
Yeah,
And I'm even more excited about coffee now than I was before.
me too. And I'm sure our listeners are feeling the same way.
I hope so.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Okay.
what are some key takeaways that our listeners
Yeah.
can apply to their own coffee journey?
Well, first and foremost, invest in a good grinder.
Yes, always the grinder.
It's the foundation of a great coffee experience.
And don't be afraid to experiment
Yes.
with different beans, roasts, and brewing methods.
There's a whole world of coffee flavors out there waiting to be discovered.
Remember that coffee is best enjoyed fresh.
Fresh.
So grind those beans right before brewing.
Right before.
And be mindful of your caffeine intake,
Yeah,
especially if you have trouble sleeping.
good point.
Support your local coffee shops and roasteries.
Oh, yeah.
They're often run by passionate people
Yes, they are.
who are dedicated to sourcing and roasting high-quality coffee.
And most importantly, savor every sip.
Yes,
Coffee is a gift that deserves to be appreciated.
what a perfect sentiment.
Ah,
I think we've covered just about everything, wouldn't you say?
I think so. We've explored the science, the
Yeah.
history, the culture, and the sheer deliciousness of coffee.
And hopefully we've inspired our listeners
Yeah.
to embark on their own coffee adventures.
Armed with knowledge, curiosity,
Yes,
and a good grinder, of course.
of course. But before we move on,
Yeah.
there's one last thing I want to touch on.
Okay.
Remember how we discussed coffee's potential
Yeah.
positive impact on mental health?
Yes.
It's not a cure-all,
Right.
but it's interesting to consider how our caffeine intake
Uh-huh.
might influence our mood and our overall well-being.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how much of our daily routine
Right.
and even our social interactions
Yeah.
revolve around coffee.
Exactly. And that leads me to a question that I want to leave our listeners with today.
Okay.
Something to ponder as you enjoy your next cup of coffee. How does your relationship with coffee affect your daily life?
That's a good question.
Do you rely on it to wake up in the morning?
Oh, yeah. I definitely need that morning coffee to get going.
Right.
What about you?
Yeah, same here. But does it help you focus?
I think it does.
Be more productive?
Yeah. I feel like I can concentrate better after I've had a cup.
Okay. Or is it more like a social thing for you?
Oh, yeah, that too.
A way to connect with people?
Definitely like meeting a friend for coffee
Yeah,
or
right.
having a coffee break with colleagues.
That's like a ritual.
It is. It's like a social lubricant in a way.
Exactly. And it makes you think about how much of our day
Yeah.
revolves around coffee.
Totally. And James touched on this when he talked about the history of coffee houses,
Oh, yeah?
how they were once centers of intellectual exchange and social life.
He called them penny universities.
Right.
Where people could gather,
Yeah.
share ideas,
And essentially get an education.
just by listening to the conversations happening around them.
I love that.
It's fascinating to think that coffee
Yeah.
played such a pivotal role in shaping society.
It makes you wonder if we've lost some of that.
Yeah, that communal aspect in today's world.
Maybe we have.
But I feel like there's also like a resurgence of interest.
Oh,
and
totally.
coffee culture.
Yeah. People are seeking out specialty coffee shops,
Yeah.
experimenting with brewing methods at home,
Yeah.
and engaging in conversations about coffee in
Yes.
a way that feels fresh and exciting.
There's a sense of community and
Yeah.
shared passion
Uh-huh.
among coffee lovers.
And I think that's something worth celebrating.
Absolutely.
It's about more than just the caffeine kick.
Yeah.
It's about the connections we forge, the conversations we share, and the simple act of enjoying a delicious cup of coffee together.
I love that. And maybe by being more mindful
Yeah.
of our relationship with coffee, we can rediscover some of those lost traditions.
And create new ones
Yes.
that foster connection and enhance our well-being.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's about seeing coffee as a catalyst
Yeah.
for meaningful experiences.
Not just a quick fix.
Exactly. So as you enjoy your next cup,
Yeah.
take a moment to reflect on what coffee means to you.
Okay.
How does it fit into your life?
Mm.
How does it make you feel?
Good questions.
And how can you savor it in a way that brings you joy
Yeah.
and enriches your day?
These are such great questions to consider.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. This whole deep dive has been amazing. I feel like my eyes have been open.
It's amazing how much we've learned
Yeah.
from just one interview with James Hoffmann.
He's a wealth of knowledge.
He is.
And he clearly has such a passion for coffee.
He does. And it's contagious.
It really is. He's inspired me to be more curious about coffee.
Me too.
Experiment more
Yeah.
with different beans and brewing methods.
Uh-huh.
And to really appreciate those quiet moments
Yeah.
with my morning cup.
I feel the same way, and I hope our listeners feel inspired too.
Yes.
Inspired to explore
To explore the world of coffee.
with a fresh perspective.
With a fresh perspective and a new appreciation for decaf.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll all be sipping decaf alongside James Hoffmann someday.
I love it.
Savoring those complex flavors without the caffeine jitters.
That's a future I can get behind. But no matter what you choose to drink,
Yeah.
whether it's a high-octane espresso
Uh-huh.
or a smooth decaf brew,
Remember?
remember that coffee is a gift.
Yes. A gift to be enjoyed and savored.
And with that, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the world of coffee.
Agreed, this has been an enlightening and enjoyable journey.
It really has, and I'm so grateful to have shared it with you
Likewise.
and all of our listeners.
Cheers to that.
Until next time, may your coffee be delicious, your mornings be bright, and your days be filled with flavor and inspiration.
I love it.